The
Here is
patrol
your
car's
identification.
headlights sliced across the
Everything
quiet
appears to be in
sidewalk
order.
just as Amora Lewis
Thank you,
stepped out of the
officer.
community
Be safe.
center, still holding the folder of policy notes she'd been reviewing. She barely had time to breathe in the cool evening air before the engine revved. Sharp, deliberate, territorial. The officer inside didn't wait for her to move. He swung his door open with a thud, forcing her to step back. "Stop right there," he snapped. His voice carried the kind of authority that wasn't earned, only assumed. Amora stiffened. "Is there a problem, officer?" He circled her like she'd been caught trespassing on her own land. His flashlight beam crawled slowly up her arms, her face, her hair, an inspection masquerading as procedure. "You look nervous," he said. "People who look nervous usually have something to hide." A bitter heat rose in her chest. "I'm nervous because you boxed me in with your car." He smirked. "Then maybe you should learn not to make officers uncomfortable." The words hit like a slap, quiet, cutting, intentional. Around them, the street hummed with distant traffic, but no one stopped. No one watched. Nothing existed except the narrow space he was squeezing her into. "Let me see your ID," he ordered, stepping closer. "If it's really yours." A gust of wind rustled the papers in her folder, scattering them across the pavement. Amora knelt instinctively to grab them. "Don't move," he barked, hand drifting toward his holster. Her breath froze, and in that suspended second, she realized something terrifying. He didn't know who she was, and he didn't care. The wind died. His hand hovered. Then his thumb brushed the safety strap. The sidewalk glistened with a thin sheen of evening dew as Amora Lewis stepped carefully over scattered papers, gathering the last of her documents from the ground. She kept her movement slow, controlled, not out of fear, she told herself, but out of necessity. Officer Grayson stood a few feet away, his hand resting deliberately on his holster as though it belonged there, as though her presence on the sidewalk justified the gesture. "Stand up," he ordered. His tone wasn't loud, yet it carried a weight that pressed into her spine. Amora rose slowly, keeping her folder close to her chest. She forced her breathing to remain even. "Officer, you startled me. I was just leaving the—" "I didn't ask for speech." He stepped closer, boots scuffing against the pavement. "I asked what you were doing out here this late." The question wasn't a question. It was an accusation dressed in protocol. "I'm leaving a community meeting," she replied, voice steady. "The building is right there." "I can see the building." He tilted his chin toward her folder. "What's in the papers?" "Policy notes," she said. "Community programs." "Policy," he repeated slowly, as though tasting the word and finding it unbelievable. "You expect me to believe you're involved in something like that?" Her jaw tightened. She swallowed the rise of anger. "I am." He smirked, small, cynical, practiced. "Uh-huh. ID." Amora reached into her bag carefully. "I'm going to take it out slowly." "Good," he said. "You know how this works." She pulled out her wallet and held it toward him, but he didn't take it. Instead, he stepped back, hand still hovering near his belt. "Put it on the hood," he said. "Then step away." Her pulse flickered. "Is that necessary?" His eyebrow arched sharply. "Did I stutter?" She placed the wallet on the hood, stepping back with deliberate calm. She felt the cool evening settle around her, a deceptive softness that contrasted with the tension tightening the air. Grayson opened her wallet with exaggerated slowness. Her ID was the first item he saw, but he lingered on it only a moment before flipping through every card she owned, as though expecting to find something incriminating wedged between receipts. "What's this?" he asked, holding up her state-level identification badge, the one she used in official buildings. "Work identification," she said. "Work," he repeated again. "For what?" "Some program." She hesitated. Revealing her position too early had backfired in the past, shifting encounters from dehumanization to resentment. "I work in public policy," she said simply. He chuckled under his breath. "Sure you do." She inhaled deeply. "Officer, may I ask why you stopped me in the first place?" "You were acting suspicious." "I walked out of a building." "You looked like you were hiding something." "I was holding papers." "You were nervous." "You boxed me in with your car." His eyes hardened. What's your tone? The words pricked like cold needles. She steadied herself. I'm speaking respectfully, she replied. Doesn't sound respectful. He closed her wallet with a snap. You live around here? Yes. Where? I don't have to answer that. Now his face shifted, controlled amusement turning into something colder. So you do have something to hide? No, she said. I know my rights. He leaned forward slightly. People who say that usually don't. A sharp breeze swept between them, tugging at the edges of her blazer. She kept her eyes on him, refusing to shrink. Officer, if you're done verifying. I'm not. He reached for her arm without warning. Not grabbing, but hovering just near enough of the threat to sharpen. Turn around, he said. Hands on the car. Her chest tightened. What for? Non-cooperation. I've answered your questions. Not the ones I asked. You didn't. He raised his voice slightly. Turn around. A pair of pedestrians slowed their pace across the street, glancing briefly at the scene. Amora's gaze met theirs, pleading, not for rescue, but for acknowledgement. They hesitated, then looked away, speeding up their steps. Cowardice or fear, she couldn't tell. She placed her hands on the hood, feeling the cold metal against her palms. Her folder slid from her grip and thudded softly onto the ground beside her. Grayson stepped behind her. She fought the rising heat of humiliation, the familiar sting of vulnerability she'd worked her whole life to outrun. This is unnecessary, she said quietly. You don't get to decide what's necessary. His radio crackled with distant chatter. He ignored it. Officer Grayson, please. Oh, so now you know my name. His voice sharpened. Did you run into trouble before? No. You sure? People like you. She flinched. The words weren't finished, but their shape was unmistakable. Complete that sentence, she whispered, and you'll regret it. He laughed softly. Is that a threat? It's a warning. His boots shifted on the pavement. I think you need to come with me. Amora turned her head slightly. Am I under arrest? Detained, he said, until I figure out who you really are. The siren of a distant ambulance echoed faintly in the night, a hollow counterpoint to the moment tightening around them. I told you who I am, she said. He gripped her wrist, not harshly, but firmly enough. You told me a story. I'm not buying it. She stared at the pavement, at the scattering of her policy notes, at the quiet street that had become a cage. Let's go, he said, and as he led her toward the patrol car, Amora realized the truth settling like ice in her chest. Tonight, her identity didn't matter. Not yet. The precinct lobby smelled faintly of coffee gone bitter, disinfectant that never fully worked, and the stale exhaustion of officers who had stopped caring long before the shift began. Amora felt the air change the moment she walked inside. Conversations dipped. Eyes tracked her, some curious, some indifferent, some carrying that quiet, familiar edge of suspicion. Officer Grayson didn't loosen his grip on her wrist, even though she wasn't resisting. The fluorescent lights buzzed faintly overhead, throwing a cold, flat glow across the room. She stood still, shoulders aligned, refusing to let the tension rolling beneath her skin show. This wasn't her first encounter with institutional arrogance, but tonight's weight pressed differently. Sit, Grayson ordered, pointing toward a hard plastic chair near the intake desk. Amora lowered herself slowly. I would like to call someone now. You'll get your turn, he said without looking at her. Right now I'm writing the report. What report? She asked. I wasn't charged with anything. He smirked. Detainment doesn't require a charge. Behind him, two officers leaned closer to their screens, pretending to work while clearly listening. One whispered something that made the other snort. Paper shuffled. A phone rang. Someone coughed. The building felt alive with low-grade hostility. I have the right to notify someone of my detainment, Amora said, keeping her tone measured. Grayson tapped lazily on his keyboard. You'll get a phone call after processing. Not before. That isn't procedure. He glanced at her. And you're an expert on procedure. A nearby officer chimed in. Hey, Grayson, maybe she watches those crime shows. Think she's a lawyer. Laughter followed, quick, careless, dismissive. Amora kept her gaze straight ahead, refusing to give them the satisfaction of a reaction. She heard every layered message in their tone. Not dangerous, not respected, not equal. Empty your pockets, another officer said, approaching with a shallow plastic tray. Amora hesitated. I haven't been told the reason for my detainment. That's above your pay grade, he said. Let's move it along. She pulled out her keys, her pen, her lip balm, small personal items suddenly treated like contraband. The officer jotted notes on a clipboard and muttered, always something. When he walked away, she exhaled slowly, grounding herself. She had sat in legislative hearings facing hostile officials without blinking. She had debated policymakers on live broadcasts. But here, stripped of context and identity, surrounded by uniforms that mirrored one another in posture and bias, she felt an old familiar tremor push at the back of her throat. Grayson returned with a metal wristband. Temporary hold, he said. Standard. She extended her arm only halfway. You still haven't told me why I'm being held. Suspicious behavior, he said. I walked out of a building. Late at night. I'm an adult, she said sharply. He leaned in slightly. Adults can commit crimes. Amora met his gaze. Are you accusing me of one? He paused. Not long, but enough for her to catch the hesitation. Not yet, he said. She closed her eyes briefly, steadying herself. Officer Grayson, if you have my ID, then you know who I am. He froze. I haven't looked closely. Liar, she said quietly. He straightened, jaw tightening. Watch it. She didn't back down. You saw it outside and you didn't react. That means one of two things. You didn't read it, or you read it and ignored it. Silence pressed between them. Across the lobby, a rookie officer called out, Hey, is she that lady from the youth council hearings? She looks familiar. Grayson shot him a sharp look. Mind your business. Just saying, the rookie muttered. The comment hung in the air like a spark ready to ignite something larger. Amara kept still. The rookie's recognition was vague, not enough to reveal her fully, but enough to unsettle the facade Grayson were building. I want my phone call now, she said. You'll wait. I won't. Grayson stepped closer, lowering his voice. You think being clever helps? It doesn't. People come in here with big attitudes all the time. They all break eventually. I'm not breaking, she whispered. He chuckled. Everyone breaks. She looked away, jaw clenched. I need to contact my office. Legally, I'm entitled to do that. Legally, he repeated with mocking emphasis. You people love that word. Her stomach twisted. That phrase, two words she'd heard before, always from the same kind of mouth, landed like a slap hidden inside a sentence. She inhaled deeply, refusing to let the sting shape her response. A female officer approached the desk, holding a stack of mail. Processing is backed up. If you want her logged, you'll have to move her to B-side. Grayson muttered something under his breath. Fine, let's go. Amora stood as he gestured toward a narrow hallway. The corridor was colder, dimmer, lined with scuffed paint that whispered stories of arguments, threats, and worn-out promises. She walked ahead of him, each step feeling heavier. Room 3, he said. She entered a small interview room with a metal table bolted to the floor. The walls were bare except for a single camera in the corner. She sat carefully, folding her hands to keep them from trembling. Grayson stood by the door. I'm going to check your information again. No, she said. You're going to tell me why I'm here. His eyes flickered, just for a moment. I told you. Suspicious behavior. That's not a reason. That's an excuse. He leaned forward slightly. You think you're above all this, don't you? No, she said. I think I'm a citizen who deserves basic respect. He scoffed. You people always want special treatment. Heat surged up her throat. I want lawful treatment. Same thing, he muttered. She stared at the table, steadying herself. You're making a mistake. No, he said confidently. I'm doing my job. She looked up. When you finally read my ID, you'll understand the difference. He flinched, barely, but enough for her to see it. You're bluffing, he said. Check it, she replied. He hesitated, then pulled her wallet from his pocket. The room fell silent except for the soft hiss of the air vent. He flipped open the ID section, expecting validation of his narrative. But the moment his eyes landed on her name, her full official title, his expression collapsed. He shut the wallet slowly. Then he whispered, voice suddenly hollow, "You, huh?" Before Mora could speak, he turned sharply toward the door, panic rising in the stiff set of his shoulders. The truth was out, but no one else knew it yet, and Grayson intended to keep it that way. The precinct lobby smelled faintly of coffee gone bitter, disinfectant that never fully worked, and the stale exhaustion of officers who had stopped caring long before the shift began. Amora felt the air change the moment she walked inside. Conversations dipped. Eyes tracked her, some curious, some indifferent, some carrying that quiet, familiar edge of suspicion. Officer Grayson didn't loosen his grip on her wrist, even though she wasn't resisting. The fluorescent lights buzzed faintly overhead, throwing a cold, flat glow across the room. She stood still, shoulders aligned, refusing to let the tension rolling beneath her skin show. This wasn't her first encounter with institutional arrogance, but tonight's weight pressed differently. Sit, Grayson ordered, pointing toward a hard plastic chair near the intake desk. Amora lowered herself slowly. I would like to call someone now. You'll get your turn, he said without looking at her. Right now I'm writing the report. What report? She asked. I wasn't charged with anything. He smirked. Detainment doesn't require a charge. Behind him, two officers leaned closer to their screens, pretending to work while clearly listening. One whispered something that made the other snort. Paper shuffled. A phone rang. Someone coughed. The building felt alive with low-grade hostility. I have the right to notify someone of my detainment, Amora said, keeping her tone measured. Grayson tapped lazily on his keyboard. You'll get a phone call after processing. Not before. That isn't procedure. He glanced at her. And you're an expert on procedure. A nearby officer chimed in. Hey, Grayson, maybe she watches those crime shows. Think she's a lawyer. Laughter followed, quick, careless, dismissive. Amora kept her gaze straight ahead, refusing to give them the satisfaction of a reaction. She heard every layered message in their tone. Not dangerous, not respected, not equal. Empty your pockets, another officer said, approaching with a shallow plastic tray. Amora hesitated. I haven't been told the reason for my detainment. That's above your pay grade, he said. Let's move it along. She pulled out her keys, her pen, her lip balm, small personal items suddenly treated like contraband. The officer jotted notes on a clipboard and muttered, always something. When he walked away, she exhaled slowly, grounding herself. She had sat in legislative hearings facing hostile officials without blinking. She had debated policymakers on live broadcasts. But here, stripped of context and identity, surrounded by uniforms that mirrored one another in posture and bias, she felt an old familiar tremor push at the back of her throat. Grayson returned with a metal wristband. Temporary hold, he said. Standard. She extended her arm only halfway. You still haven't told me why I'm being held. Suspicious behavior, he said. I walked out of a building. Late at night. I'm an adult, she said sharply. He leaned in slightly. Adults can commit crimes. Amora met his gaze. Are you accusing me of one? He paused. Not long, but enough for her to catch the hesitation. Not yet, he said. She closed her eyes briefly, steadying herself. Officer Grayson, if you have my ID, then you know who I am. He froze. I haven't looked closely. Liar, she said quietly. He straightened, jaw tightening. Watch it. She didn't back down. You saw it outside and you didn't react. That means one of two things. You didn't read it, or you read it and ignored it. Silence pressed between them. Across the lobby, a rookie officer called out, Hey, is she that lady from the youth council hearings? She looks familiar. Grayson shot him a sharp look. Mind your business. Just saying, the rookie muttered. The comment hung in the air like a spark ready to ignite something larger. Amara kept still. The rookie's recognition was vague, not enough to reveal her fully, but enough to unsettle the facade Grayson were building. "I want my phone call now," she said. "You'll wait." "I won't." Grayson stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You think being clever helps? It doesn't. People come in here with big attitudes all the time. They all break eventually." "I'm not breaking," she whispered. He chuckled. "Everyone breaks." She looked away, jaw clenched. "I need to contact my office. Legally, I'm entitled to do that." "Legally," he repeated with mocking emphasis. "You people love that word." Her stomach twisted. That phrase, two words she'd heard before, always from the same kind of mouth, landed like a slap hidden inside a sentence. She inhaled deeply, refusing to let the sting shape her response. A female officer approached the desk, holding a stack of mail. "Processing is backed up. If you want her logged, you'll have to move her to B-side." Grayson muttered something under his breath. "Fine. Let's go." Amora stood as he gestured toward a narrow hallway. The corridor was colder, dimmer, lined with scuffed paint that whispered stories of arguments, threats, and worn-out promises. She walked ahead of him, each step feeling heavier. "Room 3, he said. She entered a small interview room with a metal table bolted to the floor. The walls were bare except for a single camera in the corner. She sat carefully, folding her hands to keep them from trembling. Grayson stood by the door. "I'm going to check your information again." "No," she said. "You're going to tell me why I'm here." His eyes flickered, just for a moment. "I told you. Suspicious behavior." "That's not a reason. That's an excuse." He leaned forward slightly. "You think you're above all this, don't you?" "No," she said. "I think I'm a citizen who deserves basic respect." He scoffed. "You people always want special treatment." Heat surged up her throat. "I want lawful treatment." "Same thing," he muttered. She stared at the table, steadying herself. "You're making a mistake." "No," he said confidently. "I'm doing my job." She looked up. "When you finally read my ID, you'll understand the difference." He flinched, barely, but enough for her to see it. "You're bluffing," he said. "Check it," she replied. He hesitated, then pulled her wallet from his pocket. The room fell silent except for the soft hiss of the air vent. He flipped open the ID section, expecting validation of his narrative. But the moment his eyes landed on her name, her full official title, his expression collapsed. He shut the wallet slowly. Then he whispered, voice suddenly hollow, "You, huh?" Before Amora could speak, he turned sharply toward the door, panic rising in the stiff set of his shoulders. The truth was out, but no one else knew it yet, and Grayson intended to keep it that way. Officer Grayson shut the interview room door behind him with a sharp metallic click, the kind that vibrated through the walls. Amora listened to his footsteps fade down the hallway, hurried, uneven, nothing like the confident swagger he'd worn outside. She folded her hands on the table, steadying her breathing, counting each inhale with quiet discipline. He knew who she was now, knew exactly what he'd done, and the sudden fear in his eyes had told her everything. Minutes stretched. The vent hummed overhead. A fluorescent bulb flickered, buzzing like an irritated insect. She could hear distant voices, officers chatting casually, none aware of the storm about to form. The door swung open. A different officer walked in, a tall woman with a ponytail and tired eyes. "I'm Officer Riley. I'll be taking over for now." Amora watched her carefully. Why the sudden change? Riley offered a tight smile. "Shift rotation." "Convenient timing," Amora said softly. Riley's gaze flickered. "Let's just go over a few questions." Before that, Amora interrupted. "I'd like my phone call." "You'll get it after we." No, Amora kept her tone even. "Legally, I'm entitled to it now." Riley hesitated, glancing at the camera. I'm trying to make this easy." "For whom?" Amora asked. Riley's lips pressed into a thin line. "Let's focus on the basics. You're being held for suspicious behavior." "That's not a crime." Officer Grayson reported. Officer Grayson is lying. Riley inhaled sharply. You don't know that. I do, Amara said, because he knows who I am now. Riley stilled. The shift was small, barely noticeable, but Amara caught it instantly. Riley stepped closer, carefully measured in her movements. Who are you? She asked, voice barely above a whisper. Check my ID, Amara replied. Riley hesitated only 2 seconds before pulling the wallet from her back pocket. She opened it, looked down. Her breath caught. Oh my God, Riley murmured. You're that Amara Lewis. That's correct. The policy advisor, the education hearings, the state commission. Riley swallowed hard. This is above my pay grade. Amara met her eyes steadily. So was the harassment. Riley stiffened. I wasn't part of that. I know, but you're here now. Amara leaned forward slightly. And you have a choice. Riley closed the wallet gently and placed it on the table as if it were fragile. I need to speak with a supervisor. Please do, Amara said. Riley nodded and turned toward the door. But just as she opened it, another voice cut through the hallway. Hold on. A stocky sergeant stepped inside, the kind of officer who carried authority like a weapon, not a responsibility. Sergeant Harlan. His uniform was crisp, his expression unreadable. Ms. Lewis, he said, shutting the door behind him. I apologize for the inconvenience. Misunderstandings happen. Amara stared at him. Is that what we're calling it? Harlan clasped his hands behind his back. You weren't identified properly. Officer Grayson followed protocol with limited information. That's a lie, Amara said calmly. Riley flinched. Harlan's eyes narrowed slightly. Careful, he murmured. Why? She asked. Are you going to detain me for telling the truth? The sergeant's jaw flexed. Let's not escalate this. We want to find a resolution. A resolution? Amara echoed. I was harassed, detained without cause, denied my rights, and told people like me want special treatment. And you want to talk resolution. Riley shifted uncomfortably. Harlan's voice sharpened. You're upset. I understand. But mistakes happen. Mistakes imply lack of intention, Amara said. There was intention tonight. Harlan lifted his chin. I can authorize your release immediately. No paperwork. No complications. No record. Riley added softly, as if offering a gift. But Amara saw the real motive. No record meant no trail. No accountability. No evidence. No, she said. I want documentation. Harlan's expression finally cracked. That's unnecessary. It's lawful, she replied. You're blowing this out of proportion. No, Amara said, leaning forward. I'm bringing it into proportion. Harlan's face hardened in a way that revealed exactly how often he'd use his position to bury things. Ms. Lewis, if we make a formal record, that means internal review, statements, body cam retrieval. And, he said slowly, the department doesn't need bad press. Amara held his gaze. Maybe it needs accountability. Silence thickened. Harlan exhaled sharply. Let's be reasonable. The door opened again. A young officer peeked in nervously. Sorry, Sarge, but someone outside asked for Ms. Lewis. They said they recognized her from the televised committee hearings. Harlan's head snapped toward him. Who? A civilian, the officer said. They are waiting in the lobby. They want to know why she's here. A beat of electric tension cracked through the room. Riley covered her mouth. Grayson, somewhere outside, was probably unraveling. And Harlan, the man who tried to bury it all, looked like someone had just kicked the floor out from under him. He turned back to Amara. Don't talk to them. I'll talk to whoever I choose. Ms. Lewis, he said sharply, if the public gets a wrong impression. The wrong impression, she repeated softly, or the accurate one. Harlan stepped closer, lowering his voice. If you go out there now, this department will be under siege by morning. Then tell the truth, she said. We can control the narrative, he whispered. Amara's eyes narrowed. There it is. Riley swallowed. Sarge, maybe we should just let her go. Harlan shook his head. Not until we agree on what she's going to say. Amora stood slowly. You don't decide my words. Harlan opened his mouth, but the rookie from earlier suddenly rushed back to the door, breathless. Sir, there's media outside. Every sound in the room seemed to fall away. Harlan went pale. Media? Yes, sir. Someone tweeted a picture of her being walked in. It's spreading. Amora straightened her blazer, calm settling over her like armor. I'd like to leave now, she said. Harlan didn't respond. She walked to the door, Riley stepping aside instinctively. Ms. Lewis. Riley whispered. Yes. What are you going to do? Amora looked forward, voice quiet but unshakable. Tell the truth. She opened the door and stepped into the storm she knew was waiting. The lobby buzzed with voices long before Amora reached it. What had been a quiet precinct less than an hour ago now felt charged, as if the walls themselves vibrated with anticipation. Officers clustered near the front desk, whispering urgently. A few pretended not to look at her, eyes darting away too quickly. Others stared openly, confusion and worry battling across their faces. As Amora stepped fully into view, the conversation thinned. Cameras, several of them, clicked into position. A reporter raised a microphone. Someone murmured her name under their breath, almost reverently. She straightened her blazer. Good evening. A journalist stepped forward. Ms. Lewis, can you confirm why you were brought in tonight? Were you arrested? Were you profiled? Did the officer know who you were? Amora held up a hand. The room quieted, though uneasily. I will make a statement shortly. Behind her, Sergeant Harlan appeared with a strange smile that didn't reach his eyes. Officer Riley lingered at the edge of the room, looking torn. Grayson was nowhere in sight, either hiding or being hidden. Amora's gaze swept the space, absorbing every detail. The tension, the shifting bodies, the quiet fear of exposure. A reporter asked, Ms. Lewis, is it true you were detained without cause? Amora turned slightly. I'll speak in a moment. Harlan stepped closer. Ms. Lewis, maybe we can talk privately. No, she said. We cannot. The firmness in her tone froze him mid-step. A camera light clicked on, washing her face in a bright, unyielding glow. This was a moment she hadn't asked for, hadn't planned for, but it was one she knew how to navigate. She had spent years using her voice to advocate for others. Tonight, she would use it for herself. Ms. Lewis, another journalist called. What happened? Amora inhaled deeply, letting the air settle in her lungs. Then she spoke, her tone even, steady, measured. I was leaving a community meeting tonight when I was approached and detained without cause. Mamers erupted instantly. I complied with every instruction, she continued. I identified myself. I stated my intent. I asked for clarification. She paused. In return, I was harassed, accused of suspicious behavior, and denied basic rights. The reporters surged closer. Did the officer behave aggressively? One asked. Did he threaten you? Amora kept her voice calm. He escalated unnecessarily. He treated me as if my presence on the sidewalk was a crime. From behind her, Harlan cleared his throat. That is a mischaracterization. We were following standard procedure. Amora turned slowly, every movement controlled. Sergeant Harlan, would you like me to repeat the words spoken to me? He stiffened. That won't be necessary. But the damage was already spreading. Cameras caught every flicker of his discomfort. A journalist shouted from the back, Can you confirm your identity for us, Ms. Lewis? Amora nodded. Yes, my name is Amora Lewis. People whispered. A few reporters straightened, recognizing the weight of her position. I serve on the State Commission for Youth and Community Policy, she said. I oversee legislation on public education, community investment, and civic protections. She glanced at Harlan again, none of which protected me tonight. A ripple went through the room. So you're saying you were racially profiled? A reporter asked. Amora didn't flinch. I am saying I was treated with suspicion without reason. I am saying my rights were ignored. I am saying the officer who detained me did not follow lawful procedure. Another voice called out, "Do you intend to file a complaint?" "Yes," Amora said, "and I intend to pursue every available avenue for accountability." Riley swallowed, visibly shaken. Harlan stepped closer, whispering urgently, "Ms. Lewis, please." "No," she said again. "I will not be silenced in a building meant to uphold the law." More cameras clicked. A live stream notification chimed from someone's phone. The comments were already flooding in. "Is there bodycam footage?" a journalist asked. "Yes," Harlan said quickly, "and we will review it thoroughly." Amora turned toward him with a quiet intensity. "Release it." Harlan's eyes widened. "We need time to—" "Release it," she repeated. "Tonight." He hesitated. That was answer enough. The journalist pounced. "So the footage may contradict the narrative. Is the department withholding evidence? Why wasn't it released immediately?" Harlan raised his hands, voice tight. "Let's not jump to conclusions. This is an internal matter." "This became a public matter the second your officer put his hand on me," Amora said. A hush swept across the room. Riley stepped forward timidly. "Ms. Lewis, what can we do now?" Amora's expression softened slightly toward her. "Tell the truth." Riley nodded slowly, something shifting in her posture, some small crack of awakening. Outside, through the precinct glass doors, a crowd had begun gathering. Neighbors, community members, people holding phones high as they filmed. Their faces were a mixture of fury, concern, and quiet resolve. The air outside vibrated with collective tension. A journalist near the window murmured, "This is spreading fast." Amora stepped toward the glass. The crowd parted slightly as they saw her. Someone shouted her name, voice thick with emotion. Another raised a hand in support. The community center director stood among them, face pale, holding her purse to her chest. Harlan approached again, anxiety visible now. "Ms. Lewis, please, this is getting out of control." "It was out of control when your officer detained me," she replied. "Now it's simply visible." A reporter asked, "Will you make a formal statement later tonight?" "Yes," Amora said, "once I'm home." "And what do you want from the department?" Another asked. "Transparency," she answered. "Accountability. Reform." She paused, and an honest acknowledgement of what happened tonight. "What about the officer involved?" Someone called. Amora met their eyes. "That will be addressed through the proper channels." Inside, officers shifted uncomfortably. Some looked defensive. Others looked ashamed. A few looked frightened. And then, as the lobby swelled with murmurs and camera flashes, Amora said what will become the quote replayed across every morning broadcast. "No one is immune to injustice, but no one is immune to responsibility either." The lobby froze. Harlan swallowed. Reporters erupted with questions. Flashbulbs burst like lightning. And outside, the growing crowd answered with a rising wave of voices, echoing through the glass and into the precinct. "Justice! Justice! Justice!" Amora kept her posture steady, her voice calm, her presence unwavering. Tonight had spiraled beyond her control, but now it was within her power. The city council chamber was already overflowing when Amora stepped inside. Rows of seats were filled with community members, legal observers, journalists, and department officials who sat stiffly in their press uniforms. Cameras lined the back wall. The buzz of anticipation pulsed through the air like low thunder. At the center of it all stood the long oak table where the accountability review panel sat waiting. Marlon leaned toward her. Slow, steady, controlled. "You speak when they call you." "I know," Amora whispered, adjusting the microphone clip to her collar. "Just breathe." Layla squeezed her hand. "You face tougher rooms." "Not like this," Amora murmured. Across the chamber, Officer Grayson sat beside his union representative. He stared forward, not at her, face unreadable but tense. His jaw flexed every few seconds. His hands folded tightly, knuckles whitening. The lead panelist, Chairwoman Ortega, tapped her gavel. "We will begin the hearing regarding the detainment of Ms. Amora Lewis and the conduct of Officer Daniel Grayson. All present, Please remain respectful. A hush fell. Ortega looked toward Amora. Ms. Lewis, when we reach your segment, you may provide a detailed account. Amora nodded. The department's attorney rose. The officer acted within reasonable suspicion. Marlon stood immediately. Objection, Madam Chair. That is a conclusion of fact, not an opening statement. Ortega lifted a hand. Sustained. Counsel, stick to framing. The attorney nodded stiffly. We intend to show that Officer Grayson, following routine patrol procedure, approached an unidentified individual who appeared evasive and nervous. The situation escalated due to misunderstanding, not misconduct. Amora nearly laughed at the word misunderstanding, but kept her posture steady. Marlon rose next. What we intend to show is far simpler. Officer Grayson initiated an unlawful detainment, used racially biased language, escalated without cause, and falsified his report. And the department attempted to suppress evidence of that misconduct. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Ortega nodded. We will now review the body cam footage supplied by the department. Grayson shifted. The edited footage appeared on the screen. Grayson asking for ID calmly, Amora cooperating, and then the clip jumping forward, her hands on the hood. Everything between Grayson's aggression, his comments, his tone, was cut out. The attorney spoke quickly. As you can see, Ms. Lewis complied, and the officer maintained calm procedure. Marlon stepped forward. Play it again, please. They did. When it ended, he turned to the panel. And now, with permission, we will present the unedited footage. The department attorney stood instantly. Madam Chair, we object. The chain of custody is unclear. Ortega raised her hand. Counsel, unless you can demonstrate fabrication, the footage is admissible. The attorney faltered. Objection overruled, she declared. Amora exhaled. Slow, steady. Anthony connected the drive. The room dimmed as a new footage filled the screen. Grayson's voice emerged first. You look nervous. People like you usually have something to hide. Gasps broke out across the chamber. Grayson's representative whispered urgently to him, but Grayson didn't move. On screen, Amora's voice was calm, measured, dignified. I'm nervous because you boxed me in with your car. Grayson snide. Mocking laugh echoed through the room. That maybe you should learn not to make officers uncomfortable. A woman in the audience covered her mouth. Ortega leaned forward, face grim. Then the footage showed everything the department had cut. The threats, the coercive tone, the escalation, the phrase that caused Amora's breath to still even now. You people always want special treatment. The room erupted. Order! Ortega shouted, banging the gavel. Order! Amora's eyes flickered briefly to Grayson. He still stared forward, unmoving, but his jaw now vibrated with tension. Marlon addressed the panel. What you just watched was a reality. What the department released was a curated fabrication. The department attorney rose shakily. We need time to examine this. No, Ortega said. We have seen enough. She turned to Amora. Ms. Lewis, please approach. Amora stood, legs steady despite the rush of adrenaline swirling inside her. She took her seat before the microphone. Ms. Lewis, Ortega began. In your own words, describe the events of that night. Amora breathed in, then began. I left a community meeting around 9. I was holding my policy notes. Before I could take 3 steps, Officer Grayson revved his engine, cornered me, and demanded I explain myself. Were you informed of the reason for detainment? Ortega asked. No, not once. Did you resist? No, Amora said firmly. I complied with every request. I answered every question. And how did he respond? Amora's voice softened, trembling with a memory she fought to steady. He made assumptions. He interrogated me as though I was an intruder in my own neighborhood. He implied I was dangerous. He used language that has been used historically to dehumanize people who look like me. Grayson shifted but said nothing. Did you at any point pose a threat? Ortega asked. No. Did you identify yourself? I did. He ignored it. Marlon stepped forward. Tell them what happened when he finally looked at your ID. Amora nodded. He panicked. Not visibly, not loudly, but I saw it. And he left the room without notifying his supervisor. That is when I realized he knew exactly what he'd done. The panel scribbled notes furiously. Ortega looked at Grayson. Officer, you may respond. Grayson stood slowly. His voice, once full of cold confidence, now wavered slightly. I acted on instinct. It was dark. She looked nervous. Marlon snapped. Nervousness is not a crime. She wouldn't answer me properly, Grayson insisted. Amora stared at him. I answered everything you asked. You were evasive. I was afraid. The chamber stilled. Grayson swallowed. I didn't mean for it to escalate. Marlon cut in. You escalated it from the first second. Ortega raised a hand. Officer Grayson, sit down. He obeyed. The evidence is clear, Ortega said. The statements conflict with the truth. Silence rippled outward. Ortega folded her hands. This panel will finalize disciplinary actions pending administrative review, but our preliminary finding is as follows. She paused. Officer Grayson engaged in misconduct, violated protocol, exhibited bias, and falsified his narrative of the incident. A wave of emotion washed through the room. Amora closed her eyes. The truth had finally been spoken aloud. Not by her, but by them. The city felt different the morning after the hearing. Even the air carried a quiet tension, as if everyone was waiting to see what would happen next, listening for the subtle shift of power no one could yet name. Amora stood by her apartment window, watching sunlight spill across the street below. Cars moved slowly. People spoke in hushed tones. Her phone buzzed for the 5th time in 5 minutes, but she let it ring. She needed this silence. A soft knock came at her door. It's open, Amora said. Layla stepped inside, carrying 2 cups of tea. I figured you didn't eat. Amora gave a tired smile. I didn't. Layla handed her the cup. The news is everywhere. Every channel. Every platform. The hearing clip, especially the line "nervousness is not a crime," is trending. Amora sighed. I didn't want to be a symbol. You became one anyway, Layla said gently. Not because you asked for it, because they forced you into the role. Amora took a slow sip. Any updates from Marlon? He's on his way, and Anthony is already at the office preparing the next steps. There's movement. Movement. Layla nodded grimly. The department released a statement at dawn. Amora closed her eyes briefly. Let me guess. We acknowledge the panel's findings and will continue to evaluate. Pretty much, Layla said. But they couldn't soften everything. Not after what came out. A buzzing sound interrupted them. Amora checked her phone. A notification from the city's official channel. Layla inhaled sharply. Read it. Amora opened the alert. Her heart pounded once. Then again. Finally, she whispered, they terminated him. Officer Daniel Grayson, terminated effective immediately for misconduct, bias, protocol violations, and falsified reports. Statement pending review by the district attorney for potential charges. Layla placed a hand over her heart. It happened. Amora didn't smile. The weight in her chest didn't lift. Good, she said softly, but it doesn't undo what happened. No, Layla agreed, but it's a start. Another knock echoed through the apartment. Marlon stepped inside, holding a folder. His expression was calm, but something flickered in his eyes, relief mixed with the exhaustion of a battle half won. You saw the update? He asked. I did, Amora said. There's more. Marlon set the folder on the table. The department also announced a review of officer training modules, mandatory bias reviews, and the reinstatement of oversight recommendations they ignored 2 years ago. That's significant, Amora said carefully. It is, Marlon replied, and it happened because of your case. Amora lowered her gaze. I didn't want a legacy built on trauma. Marlon pulled out a chair and sat today. Legacies aren't built on suffering, Amora. They are built on survival. And what you did, what you faced, forced change. Layla added, communities feel seen because of you. Amora swallowed, throat tight. I just want to breathe without replaying it all. You will, Marlon said gently. Healing isn't instant. Amora stood and walked to the window again. Outside, a group of teenagers stood on the corner, holding handmade signs from last night's rally. One of the girls noticed Amora and pointed. The group smiled, raising their signs higher, but not in worship, not in spectacle. In solidarity, Layla joined her. You okay? I'm trying to be. They stood quietly until Marlon's phone vibrated. He stepped away to answer it, speaking in a low tone. When he returned, his face was serious. That was the district attorney's office, he said. They are opening an inquiry into whether the edited footage constitutes evidence tampering. Amora felt a chill glide down her spine. Against Grayson. And potentially others, Marlon said. Supervisors, editors, whoever approved the release. Layla whispered, This is bigger than we thought. Amora nodded slowly. It always was. Her phone buzzed again, a message from the unknown bystander. Thank you for standing up. You didn't just fight for yourself. She typed back, Thank you for recording. You changed everything. After sending it, Amora turned back to her team. What now? Now, Marlon said, you rest, and then we move forward intentionally. No rush statements. No reactionary interviews. Publicly, Anthony's voice came from the hallway. You'll need to speak one more time. He stepped inside, laptop in hand. A brief address. Calm, strong, factual. No anger. No fireworks. Just truth. Amora nodded. I can do that. Anthony closed the laptop. Before that, I need to show you something. He clicked the remote. Her television lit up with footage of last night's protest. Hundreds of people packed the streets outside the precinct. Signs reading, We believe a more bodycam truth matters justice for U.S. all. The chanting was steady, unified, grounded in shared experience. Layla whispered, Look at them. Amora pressed a hand against her heart. I didn't know it was this big. It's not about big, Marlon said quietly. It's about real. For a moment, the room fell into a reverent silence. Then Anthony cleared his throat. There's one last thing. Not for strategy. For you. He walked to the screen again, switching to a news clip. A local anchor spoke in a measured tone. Tonight marks a shift in our city's conversation about policing and accountability. Amora Lewis, a respected public policy leader, has reminded us of a truth many ignored. Dignity is not optional, and justice is not negotiable. Amora blinked slowly, emotion stirring in ways she couldn't fully name. Anthony closed the screen. That's the impact. Amora exhaled, long, slow, steady. I'm ready. Ready for what? Layla asked gently. To walk forward, Amora said. Finally. Later, when they all left to prepare statements and schedules, Amora remained alone for a moment. She walked to her front door, placed her hand on the knob, then stepped outside. The sunlight touched her face. The same sidewalk she had once feared now felt reclaimed. Quiet, steady, hers again. The beginning and the ending met here, not in defeat, but in resilience.